Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth commit of commit.js. So in this episode, we're basically going to fix a few mistakes that I made the last time. The problem was that I was way too tired because of the party that I went the previous night. So I made a bunch of stupid mistakes, but it was fun.
Definitely, it was fun.
After all, we're humans, so we made mistakes.
And it's the first day of the weekend, so it's not normal after Friday.
Yeah,
Time to time.
exactly. So Happy New Year as well. This is the first episode for this year, and I hope that this year we can provide you with a lot of quality content about JavaScript and all the surroundings. So hopefully it will be good for you. I'm very happy to also say that we we already have like 40 subscribers. And we're, I don't know, close to the half of what we want. I mean, we want a little bit more, like 100, so we can get our YouTube unique ID. So hopefully we can reach this amount of subscribers soon. So Harry, do you want to say hi or I don't know, say something?
Yes, I want to say hi, and I want to wish you to have a great year in this 2020, as we call it here in Bulgaria. So pretty much that's it for me. I mean, you already know me. I'm JavaScript enthusiast. I will be asking a couple of questions while Iliya is typing some code, and we will see where we are going. That's it.
Yeah, Aleksander won't be joining us today because he's busy. But it's going to be only me and Harry. And best of luck to everyone in the new year, and hopefully you'll be very healthy and you'll achieve a lot of things. So let's start with what we did last time to see what stupid mistakes I made. So this is the code. Hopefully you can see it. So pretty much I copied the code from last time, and today we're going to be extending it and changing it a little bit. So let's see in the browser what we made. Yeah, today episode we are pretty much going to be talking about not only, but we'll implement code splitting and lazy loading. So we're going to see how we can, for example, do dynamic imports, and this is going to be dynamically splitting our applications to multiple parts, which is going to be pretty cool. And we'll see some lazy loading. But first, let's start with our small application. At a certain point, probably it will be a good idea to, wait a second, what is this? This is like my component. I thought that I have two links here. So the previous time we pretty much implemented a single page application router. Here we can see that we are actually able to navigate from one path to the other by just clicking these two links, and here we can see the content changing and the URL as well. But our application doesn't reload the whole page as we're used to when we don't have single page applications. And all the other code is basically the same from the previous times. But as you see, like you can actually see in the console the bug that I made. So whenever I'm actually doing something like typing, we see a bunch of console logs here from the router. And this is because I made a stupid mistake. I'm just quickly going to show it. So pretty much what we created is this directive. It's called the create ref. Pretty much create reference and use reference. Today I'm actually going to show you what I had in mind, what I couldn't achieve in the previous episode. Today I pretty much feel refreshed and I had enough sleep, I guess, to be able to do the demos correctly. And here inside the router component, no, actually it was in the app component, what we actually did inside the template, I'm actually going to hide this because it's really big. We're saying, okay, we want to use this reference that we create here. So here we have the router, and somehow we want to get the reference for the router, so we can actually use the navigate method from the router. So we create the reference here, and then we want to use it here. But what we are actually doing in this useRef is actually we're subscribing and saying that every time like something changes for this data, we want to call this function. This is something that we don't want because we want only to be able to get the reference for the router and just use the navigate once, not every time. Like we don't want to actually subscribe because this will trigger a re-render or navigation every time like something changes. So there are a couple of things that we need to do here. So in the previous demo, in the previous video, I actually posted a few. If you saw the description, I actually said that this is an error, and actually the code that I wrote the first time is actually correct. So what we want to do here is get this. We want to use the useRef function that will get the directive, and from the directive we want to actually get from this container that we have from the collection. We want to get the thing that is associated with this directive, and pretty much this is all we need. Of course, we want to export it. And this thing actually will have a similar thing. It's going to be called bind reference, which will actually bind the reference of this element to another component. And this is going to be pretty useful because today we're going to extend our example by creating a router link component that we'll actually use instead of just using this reference anchor tags that we're actually, I think they were anchor tags, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see how this is going to change, and let's see if it's going to work. So pretty much what I have to do here is, I don't know, delete this part, or maybe I'll just delete the whole thing. So it's easier. I'm just going to create the new functions. Okay, and what we're going to do is say use ref, and here I'm going to say I want to use the context.router, and then I want to say I want to use navigate. So I don't have auto completion here because we actually don't know what useRef is going to return. So what we actually can do is say that this is going to be a generic like that, and pretty much it will also return this. Actually, it's going to be pretty cool if we can actually say that the directive here it has its own generic, so it can automatically get inferred by TypeScript. Let's see if we can do this. So we
some
have
TypeScript magic.
Okay, let's not. I mean, it's, after all, like I've noticed that not a lot of people were watching the TypeScript episodes, so maybe they're not very interested in the TypeScript. So I'm quickly just going to fix it by doing this. So I'm just going to be providing the type and then saying that I'm going to just return this. But yeah, it's not going to be very hard to do it yourselves if you're interested. So, okay, let's continue. And here I can just do the router component like that, and I'm going to have the navigate method like this. And here I can say that I'm going to navigate to this path. And I'm going to do this the same thing here. And I'm going to say test one, hopefully. I think this was it. And let's see, as you see, everything, not everything, test two. It should be test two here, yeah. Okay, we don't have a test one. Okay, there it is. Everything is working correctly. So,
can you clear just the console so our viewers can see that there's nothing new in the console happening?
Yep. I mean, we can actually see that there is, but whenever I'm typing here, there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
Because we're not subscribing to the thing anymore. But yeah, this is what we actually wanted, to not trigger any additional refreshes when something is changing, because the subscription, we don't have a subscription. So yeah, everything's working perfectly now. I'm quickly going to clear this console log here in the render because I really don't need it. So I'm just going to go to the router and just delete the, where is it here? Okay, so next step, let's quickly create a router link component. So we don't have to be doing this thing using useRef all the time. I don't think that this is a very good practice to be creating these functions inside the templates. I mean, it's always better to have a different component that will actually be doing this by itself. So let's see how we can do this. Okay, so let's create, I'll just create it inside the router. So let's say router link.component.ts. And quickly, I'm just going to copy this code here because I don't want to type it again, and say router link component. So the router link component will actually have a template, but the template will be very simple. It will just be a slot. Link template. Okay, we'll get the context. So the context will be actually our component like that. And it will be a grouter link like that. Of course, we have to import the component. TypeScript is not helping me at all. Import from, what was it? Decorators component. And here we're going to use the component like that. So the template function, let's see, router link. I'm not sure why it's complaining, but anyways. Actually, why is it complaining? That's pretty... this is because it's not... Okay. I think that after we connect it to the application, by just importing it, everything will be okay. Let's see. I'm going to quickly just say router link component like that, and hopefully things are going to start looking better. And the problem is that it's not returning anything.
Yeah, we need the slot that you mentioned.
Yeah, we have to return the HTML and just slot. By the way, I'm doing this, but maybe it's going to be a good idea to just have to extend, for example, HTML like anchor tag instead of doing this. Maybe it's going to be a better idea, but I think for now it's okay just by doing this. We actually don't need the context because we're not going to be providing anything, and pretty much is going to be a good example, I think, because we haven't used the slots, I think, in our application yet. I mean, we showed what they are, but we haven't used them, so I'm just going to quickly use them here. Okay, so next thing, what we have to do is actually have a binding for the ruler. And one other thing that we actually need is to be able to get an attribute from our router link. So let me show you how we're going to use this. Let me copy the tag and go inside here. So what we want is to have something like this. And here we probably want to have like a path or two, something like this. Maybe 2 is better because it's router link 2 somewhere. And we want to be able to get this thing. And of course, we will also need to provide the router. So we have to connect it somehow. And we are pretty much going to be doing this by providing it through the attributes. Probably this will change in the future whenever we decide to create a dependency injection mechanism, because I think the dependency injection is much better than just typing everything. I mean, it will exist somewhere in a dependency injection container, and we can actually get it from there. So it's going to be a much better scenario, but just for this purpose, we'll have to have something like .router. And here we're going to use our other directive that is going to be bind reference. So it's going to be something like bind ref, and here we're going to say context.router, something like that. Of course, we don't have this thing yet, and another thing is that we have to implement this too. So let's start with this part to see how we can actually do this. I think in the first episode, when we're talking about web components, we actually mentioned how we can do this. So let's see. But yeah, there is one issue here that we actually have a decorator, and this decorator is kind of creating the custom elements instead of us. So yeah, there is like some logic here happening, and we actually don't have we have to extend our component decorator to be able to, for example, set that we have observed attributes that we want to be able to get notified every time they change, right, Harry?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so we actually have to create another decorator, and probably this is going to be a really good case because we can actually use the reflect metadata and see how we can actually use it to, yeah, just pretty much use it for our application. Of course, you can do this without reflect metadata. There are like libraries like lit.html, not lit.html, lit element. It's called lit element. It pretty much uses decorators and stuff like that to do stuff, pretty much similar stuff to what we are doing here. And they use symbols instead of reflect metadata. But anyways, I mean, no matter what, it's pretty much almost the same. So the perfect scenario, what it would be, is to be able to say, okay, I want to have an attribute that I want to get notified, so to observe it, and it's going to be called to. And this to is going to be pretty.
You're in Bulgarian mode, I guess. Oh no, never mind. Never mind.
No problem. So yeah, this is going to be a to, and this is going to be something that we want to be observing. So what we want is to have a decorator that is called, for example, attribute, something like this. Oops, attribute. And maybe we don't even have to call it, we don't need it to be like a function. So pretty much by using this decorator, what we are actually going to be doing is basically we're going to be connecting this attributes to the observed attributes, and we're actually going to automatically bind it to the instance whenever it changes. So let's see how we can do this. So let's say attribute .ts, and here I'm just actually, should I copy, should I not? Probably copy is not the best idea, but let's just copy this thing. So the text changes, it's going to be attribute, and here in the attribute we actually don't need this. So let's see what we actually had. So the text changes, it pretty much was able to be used in a few scenarios. The first scenario was whenever we were doing like the text changes on a method. So this is where we actually needed the descriptor. And the other case is whenever we're using it on a property. So because an attribute is always going to be a property, or is it? Maybe we want to be able to do it on setters and getters as well, but let's do it really simple for now and just forget for the descriptor. And yeah, I'm just going to quickly just do this. Anyways, even if we do it for like a setter and getter, I think that it will be fine. I don't know. Let's just start with a simple case. So here, what we're actually going to be doing is say something like const attributes. And what we want to do is like check to see if their previous attributes set for the current, for example, component. And if they are, we want to be able to concatenate the new one that we apply the decorator to the previous ones. So let's say something like reflect dot. And here we need to use like something like, I'm not sure why.
Should you import it somewhere, or I don't know?
No, it's global, so it should. I mean, it's globally used, so I think it should be able to. We should be able to use it. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Reflect.
Found it.
Yeah, TypeScript is kind of slow today, so we need to use get on. No, reflect get. Is it this? No, this is the reflect from. This is the reflect from ECMAScript 6, actually. It's not the reflect that we're actually using. Okay, I'm just going to quickly write it. It's called reflect get on metadata. And here we are actually going to put a custom string. So I'm going to use, for example, something like component attributes. So, and of course I have to provide a target. So the target will actually be this thing, target, but the prototype. Because the prototype will actually be the main thing. The target is the individual instance, so I mean the class, so it's better to be able to set it to the prototype. And here what we're actually going to be doing is say that after we get all the attributes, we want to say reflect dot and use the define metadata. And say, okay, I want to define, I'm going to use the same string here, like this. And then I'm going to say attributes dot concat. And I want to add the new key, like that. And then I'm going to also put the target, and probably this is how it should be working, hopefully. Actually, I'm not sure if this needs to be the prototype. Maybe let's just use it like this. And of course, we need to handle the case because here I'm already using the concat. We have to provide an empty array. So we're going to say, okay, reflect metadata, get me this metadata for this target. And if it doesn't exist, so probably it will return undefined or no, we want to pretty much get an empty array and then just concat the new thing. Okay, this is the
first thing should get our two attribute, right? So in our case, this is the thing that will get our two attribute and let us do stuff with it.
No, right? This is actually going to append the two attribute to this metadata that is going to be for the current target.
Yeah.
And now we have to go inside the component decorator and we have to get all the attributes for the certain component and do the methods that we need that will actually.
I get you,
yeah. Just wait a second, you'll understand. So we're going to the component decorator, component like this. And what we're actually going to do here is probably I'll just remove this or just actually I'm going to use it and say, okay, I want to get not the design parameters because I don't care what we have inside the constructor. I actually want to get the component, my custom string attributes. And I'm going to say attributes like that. And here is going to be the prototype. Because whenever we are actually applying a decorator, the target is going to be the prototype. And whenever we are applying on the class, actually the target is going to be the class, and we need to get the prototype or something like that. I mean, we'll see if it starts working. So we want to get the attributes. And here, whenever we are extending the HTML element, what we want to do is say that we want to have a static property, static getter, that it's observed attributes. And here in the observed attributes, we're just going to say return attributes. And of course, we want to be able to say, okay, if this doesn't exist, just return an empty array. So this is what we need for now. And the other callback that we needed is attribute changed callback. So attribute changed callback. I think this is how it was. And then we have to say what was the first value? I think it was the name. Then what's the old value, which is very strange for me because not all the time I need the old value, right? This is something that I remember just because I'm always bothered by writing the old value. I much would prefer to have the old value as a last argument because probably I won't need it in most cases, but anyways, then we are going to use the new value like this. Of course, these are all going to be, they're not going to be strings, probably they're going to be any's. So I'm just quickly going to do this. And here what we actually want to do is say this dot, not dot, this name, like this. Of course, we have to say that this is an any because TypeScript is going to complain, equals new value. And pretty much, I think this is all we need. This is actually, I'm going to leave this because at a certain point, if we decide to create a dependency injection mechanism, this will be useful. So I don't want to forget it. And let's see, in here, I have to actually import the attribute from my decorator. So let's just do it, this attribute. And attribute like that. Okay, perfect. And let's see what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to quickly remove this part because, as you see, it's in red, and I actually want to be able to use it here. I'm going to type a text, some text, so we can actually see the components. There it is. So this is actually our slot that we use. This is really cool. And let's quickly go. I'm quickly going to zoom in a little bit because probably you won't be able to see. Let's go inside the decorator that we created, the attribute decorator. And let's see what's going here on here. And of course, the component decorator that gets all the attributes. So I'm refreshing the page. See, I'm entering the attribute because these decorators are executed first. So we have the target. The target should be, let's see what it is. So yeah, it's actually the router link should be the prototype. Yet I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's the prototype. Okay, then we get the attributes that we currently have. Since we don't have any, it's going to be just an empty array. There it is, attributes, empty array. And then we just concat this thing and say, okay, reflect metadata, put this, so link this metadata to this target that we currently have. And inside the component, whenever we come here, we're actually going to get the metadata for this target. Let's see what the target is. So the target, as you see, is actually our router link component. And what we actually need is the prototype, this thing that we actually had the previous time. And we're actually going to get the attributes, and we should actually have the, yeah, there it is, the 2. And what we're actually going to do is just return on the observed attributes this thing, and just anytime it changes, we're actually going to get notified. So we're rendering, and we actually should see how we enter the attributes changed if I haven't mistaken something. But yeah, there it is, we entered it. And now the 2 attribute is actually accessible to our component, so it's already binded. So we can actually use it. Kari,
yeah, now I understood. Everything's clear now. So pretty much we are like putting these attributes on our component, and after that, from the disk of our component, we're able to access all the attributes and get their values.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's very straightforward and very easy if you're using reflect metadata. With the symbols, it's almost the same. I mean, it's not very hard, but I mean, other way you can. If you're not using TypeScript, the symbols is probably the best way.
And this is one of the moments when you are like, thank you, Google, Facebook, and everyone out there that are making libraries for us, the front-end developers, and JS and JavaScript. Yeah, wars.
We should be very thankful. There are a lot of people working for open source projects and working probably without even getting paid for this. And yeah, I mean, we're not actually getting paid for what we're doing here now as well. So
yeah,
we're
for the community.
Yeah, hopefully people will appreciate it. Okay, next part. So what we have to do now is use our bind ref here and bind the router from this reference that we have here. So let's quickly create this and start using our router link. Okay, we have to go to our ref directive. So here, and I'm quickly going to delete this ugly thing that I created last time. Sometimes when I go and check my code, like when I was not feeling good, I'm like this. I need to delete all of it.
You are not the only one.
Yeah. So what we are going to do is say export const bind ref, and here in the bind ref, what we're actually going to do is get the directive, and we're actually going to return a new directive. Okay. Inside this directive. Wait, no, it's not going to be like this. Actually, this is going to be the new directive, bind ref, and inside the directive, we're actually going to get the directive that we want to get the value from. The next thing what we're going to do is get the node. So this is going to be the node part. And the next thing, actually it should be attribute part, I think. And the next thing is actually the function that we're going to be using. So here we are actually going to do a subscription, and we're actually going to see how we can maintain state for the current directive, because every time we are actually rendering, we don't want to be doing another subscription if we already have a subscription. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. But let's first see how we're actually going to do this. So we're going to say container dot subscribe, and here I want to say I want to subscribe for this directive that I got here, and I want to have a listener. So this listener is going to get the data that we have. Pretty much this is going to be the router in our case. And here we're going to just say node dot set value to data and node dot commit. And this is pretty much all for this scenario. But what I said, we have to keep in mind that every time we are rendering, we will be executing this code. So what we have to do is create a state. So the state usually, as you probably saw when we were talking about lit HTML, are done with weak maps. I already talked about weak maps, so I'm not going to repeat myself. If you don't know what a weak map is, you can either watch the previous episode or just go in MDN and read. So I'm going to say I'm going to have state with new weak map, and inside this weak map, what I'm going to do here is say, okay, since I'm creating a directive, the thing that is not going to be changing is this node part. So I want to say const existing subscription maybe, or existing something. I'm not sure how to name it right now. Let's see if I'll figure out a better name later. So get for the node that we currently have. So this will never change, and actually this is going to be existing directive, because here I'm going to say, okay, if we have the existing directive, and if the existing directive is the same as the one that we currently have, we don't want to do anything, so we just want to return. And if it's not, what we want to do is just say state.set and say I want for this node to set this directive. Then there it is. I fixed my mistake. Existing something is now existing directive. And pretty much this is what we want. So let's see how we can actually use this. Here inside the components, I'm just going to quickly import it. TypeScript is very helpful this time. And let's see if I can quickly remove these parts and create the navigation. So here we're going to have test2 like this. And oops, I'm going to quickly rename it to test1 and test2. Okay, and what I have to do now is just create the navigation, to use the navigation inside my router links. So let's go to the router link component, and here inside, not the constructor, inside the connected callback, or actually, yeah, connected callback, I can use connected callback, something like this, dot add event listener. So here it's going to be complaining that we don't have an event listener for this component, just because it doesn't know that this thing is going to be an HTML elements. This is something that we have to probably find a way to fix in TypeScript. So I'm just quickly going to do this and say that this method is just going to be any. So TypeScript will stop complaining about this thing. For now, I mean, it's not a good idea, as I said. Maybe we can actually say that this is going to be an HTML element. And I'm just wondering how we should do this. But yeah, this should be okay. So I'll add event listener for click. And here we are going to provide a function. And in this function, we're going to get the event. Event is going to be what? Mouse event, I think. The click is a mouse event. And here we can say event dot prevent default. Even though we don't have a default behavior, we can say stop immediate propagation because we don't want to propagate it. Maybe, I don't know. And here we can say actually we're going to have a router. This router is going to be a router component like this. We're actually not going to be initializing it for now because it's going to get binded at a certain point. And here we're going to say if this dot router. Oops, now we don't have the router, but what we can do is say that this thing is this and this. Yep. Now we should have the router. There it is. And we can say if we actually don't have it, we want to just return. And if we have it, we want to say router.navigate and just say this.do. Perfect. And let's see if everything is going to work correctly. Let me just remove the breakpoints that I made earlier and see how the navigation is going to be performing. So, oops, we have some text. Some text. Didn't I change this?
You renamed it.
Maybe I haven't saved it. Okay. So we're in test 2, and as we see, we're navigating perfectly with our router links. Everything is working correctly, and yeah, everything's perfect. Much better, I think.
Just one comment out there about the stop propagation that you added to the click. Won't that block the cases where inside the slot you're like putting a component and you want to trigger some stuff in that component? Do you get me? Like,
yeah, I understand what you mean. This won't get blocked just because the slots are presented outside of the component.
Yeah.
So there is our component. We're actually attaching an event to this. Actually, this is the shallow root. I'm not sure if we're attaching the. Let's see. I'm not sure. I think that it won't. It should not. But let's see. So here in the app component, let's say that we actually want to have a more complex element. It's going to be a doof. I'm really sick of doing this deep doof. Okay, and let's say I want to have a click. And inside this click, I want to just console log. Hello. And let's see if Har is correct. This is the test 1. Okay. Let's clear the console. And as we see, we're not blocking
it. Works.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice.
This is going to be actually strange if it did block it. But actually, when you think about it, I mean, it shouldn't, because you're actually stopping the immediate propagation from this point on, right? From this, like the parent to the top,
but
right?
it's inside, so it will work.
Yeah, it's inside, so it should go, and then it will propagate to the parent, and the parent will actually block it. I mean, it's not necessary for you to do it, just because maybe, I mean, it's better to be able to understand that something happens. I don't know. I mean, I just put it there just to see that we can do it. But there is no problem to just come here and just comment it out, because it's really not necessary. It's not something that we actually want. I mean, I just comment it out because someone might think, okay, why do we need this? And we actually don't need it. So yeah. Perfect. So let's continue with the other things that we currently want to be doing. And they are to have some lazy loading. So, Harry, do you want to say a few words about code splitting and lazy loading, or maybe later?
Maybe it will be better if you start and show what's lazy loading, and after that I'll be with the theory stuff and where's the hype right now.
Okay, perfect. Let's start then. So what we actually want to do is to be able to split our applications to smaller parts. I mean, our application is not very big, but whenever it becomes big, we want to be able to load as fast as we can inside the user's browsers, right? And if we have one single bundle, as we currently have, it's not going to be as quick as having multiple bundles and just downloading them whenever they're needed. And this is where code splitting and lazy loading is critical. So pretty much if you go to the Webpack website and check the section about code splitting, here is everything that you need to understand how you can actually implement it in your project. So there are a few ways. The first way is by entering another entry point, as they're showing here in the example. Pretty much this means that you're actually going to have this bundle, which is going to be the index bundle, and then you're going to have the other bundle. And this is going to be able to, you're actually going to be able to load them separately if you want, of course. And another thing that they're saying that because you want to be preventing, for example, since you're going to be having two bundles, if you want to be able to kind of optimize your code and different parts whenever they're included in both bundles to be extracted to a separate bundle instead of having them in both bundles at once, you can put this optimization thing that we actually put the previous time and say, okay, I want to be optimizing and I want to have, actually, was this it? I think it was this, right? That is creating the vendor bundle with the shared stuff. So this is something that is really cool, and we already added it into our application the previous time. Yeah, the other thing that we're going to be using, these are the dynamic imports that we actually be able to be importing our components dynamically, and this is so-called lazy loading. And pretty much what you have to do is remove this part, add this chunk file name thing inside the output. Let's see if we currently have it. Yeah, chunk file name, there it is. And this is actually going to be automatically, whenever it sees a dynamic import, it will actually split your code. And whenever you're actually calling this dynamic import, it will go and fetch it from the server and just download it so it can get presented to your users. So here they're removing this optimization. I'm not sure why, but I think that we're going to leave it as it is. You can also use named chunks. This is how you do it. But in our case, this is something that we want. I mean, we can show how it's done. It's not something very hard to do. The only part is that you have to be adding these comment tags that are used by Webpack to be able to put the names correctly. In the case that you don't actually have this, you're just going to have a number, and that's all. Actually, this is something that it's already working with Angular, for example. Before, we didn't have the chance to be using named chunks. But since Angular has a compiler, I think the compiler itself puts these parts inside the code, and this is how Webpack knows how to name the chunks. Because in our case, we don't have a compiler, and if we want to have the names of the chunks, we have to put these comments, but we'll see how to do this a bit later. And yeah, let's see how we can implement our lazy load. So first, what we have to do is come and make a few changes here in the TypeScript compiler, because here we currently have a module that is using commit.js. And if we are using this commit.js module, the problem is that whenever we're running our Webpack, it won't actually be code splitting the dynamic import part. So we won't be able to do the code splitting just because we're actually going to, I mean, TypeScript is going to say, okay, I'm just using commit.js. I don't know what like the dynamic import is. So it will actually convert it to ECMAScript 5 and it's going to mess up things. So what we want to do here is say ES next. So TypeScript knows that we're using something that it's ECMAScript next imports. What else do we need to do something else? I think that we should put module resolution. Yeah, this, I think we should put this as well, since I think it's necessary. let's see. I mean, I'm going to leave it. Let's see if it's going to start working. Okay, so what we currently have is, where is our configuration for the router? I think it's the uproots, there it is. And as you see, we don't have any lazy loading, but what we want to be able to do is, for example, say something like this. So instead of component, we want to do something like load component, and provided a function that is going to get code. And inside this function, we're going to do the dynamic import that comes from ECMAScript 6. And here you can actually say, okay, well, I want to load this, for example, test2 component. Actually, this thing returns a promise. So what you need to do here is pretty much say then and get the component from your module, because this is going to be a module, I think, something like mm.testComponent2. So this is something that we do in Angular, pretty much it looks the same way. The only difference is that we're not, maybe you can, yeah, I think you can lazy load components, yeah. But most of the time, whenever we're using it like this inside the router, we're lazy loading modules, something that we don't have in our application, or at least not yet. But anyways, so let's create this thing. So first, we have to modify our interface a little bit, and we can say, okay, this is going to be optional, and here we're also going to have an optional thing that is going to be load component, something like that. And actually, it's going to be a function that returns something, I don't know, like a component or anything. And there it is. Currently, TypeScript is not complaining anymore. Now, the only thing that we need to do is integrate it with our router. So let's do this. Here inside the router, we're going to come and say something like, let's see where we're actually doing the rendering. So yeah, here we say, okay, I want you to find the current root from this array that we currently have, and I want you to get the component and just put it inside the active component. So this is when we actually have a component. What if we don't have it? So let's say something like if current root dot, we have to actually extend our thing here. So we're going to have a component and load component. It's going to be an any as well. Maybe we can do like this as well. So actually not complaining. And here I'm going to say load component. And it's going to be air.load component. Okay. And here we're going to say current root dot load component. And if we don't have a load component, this is what we want to be doing. So these are the two scenarios. Of course, here, as you see, we have the question mark, which means that if we don't have a current root, if it's no, pretty much it will put probably a no value or undefined to the active component, which is not a problem since we already handling this in the component outlet that we created. So everything's fine. So what we have to do here is say something like current root dot load component. As you see, TypeScript is smart enough to know that since we have the if condition, then you can just use it without the question mark. And we're going to call this function, and then this function is actually going to be returning a promise, but I didn't define this, so I'm just going to say then. And here we actually get the component and say this dot active component is going to be my component that is returned from this function, and this is going to be maybe a component, something like this. And let's see if it's going to work. Okay. Yeah. So let's restart our Webpack, and let's see what we're actually going to get. Hopefully, we won't have any errors. As you see, we have a few bundles. So the first thing that we have is the 0 bundle. This is going to be our lazy loaded component. And we also have the main bundle. This is going to be the rest of our application. And we also have the vendor bundle. This is the shared things inside our application. And yep, let's see what's going to happen. So which one did I put? I put, let's see,
The second, I think.
Yeah, the second one. So let's see, I'm going to refresh the application and go inside the network tab. It's pretty easy to see if we're actually going to load something. So let's examine what we currently loaded. So we have the vendor bundle, we have the main bundle, and there are a few things. The WebSocket is used from the Webpack dev server. So currently we don't see the zero bundle, this one that we currently have here. So let's see how this is going to get downloaded. Whenever we click 2, what happens is that the zero bundle gets downloaded, as you see. And this is just because we're pretty much loading it ourselves. So whenever we click, what happens is that the router gets the component, so gets this load component function for this current route, and pretty much it just fetches the component from the back end and
voila, magic.
Yeah, voila, magic. This is actually, we don't need this. We have to remove it. I think Webpack already used the tree shaking algorithm and removed it since we are not using it anywhere inside the file. And pretty much this is lazy loading and this is code splitting. And this is why I didn't want to have an extra episode, just because it's very simple, but at least we made a few other things to our application. And yeah, I think it was pretty interesting, but I mean, we have, I think, a lot of time still left, so we can do
and I want to say a few things around the lazy loading hype and stuff. So probably most of you right now are like, all right, let's split all the chunks and everything to the smallest possible pieces that they can ever exist. But keep in mind, if you're like referring, like importing, let's say one chunk to another chunk to the third chunk, if you load the third chunk, it will get the whole thing. I mean, like you import everything that is being dependent in the chunk that you are currently viewing, which is a good thing to be kept in mind, because a lot of time we are like having this little small component and it depends on a lot of shared stuff. And let's say you have kind of big shared model in, let's say, React or Angular, wherever, and you have this small component, but behind the scenes it's depending on a lot of stuff. It's the same thing when you're using npm libraries, which are like no one knows who wrote them and stuff. And in that order of thoughts, I want to show you a few tools that can help you prevent your bundle from growing oversized. So I'll share my screen for a second. I already loaded the paste of the tools. So share screen, share, and my screen should be shared right now.
There it is.
All right. So the first thing is bundle phobia. Probably most of you know about it, but every time that you think about adding a new package, just let's say jQuery or whatever, you can see it here. We wait for like a few seconds. All right, it's slower than what I imagined, but it will show all the other dependencies that jQuery is dependent on. And I don't know the reason why, but for some reason this thing crashed. All right, whatever, we can try it out later. The other cool thing that I found today is this little plugin that is import cost, as you can see, related to, let's say, for example, with Lodash, you can import the whole Lodash library, which is 70 kilobytes. Keep in mind that if you only need the unique ID, which is like a tiny bit of the whole Lodash thing, you can specify it and just get 2 kilobytes. And imagine this thing at scale. I mean, like you're using, let's say, Lodash, RxJS, and other libraries, and if you're importing the whole of the library, your bundle is like growing exponentially, which is not cool. And another trendy thing that I thought that I would for my picks in the end is this library, which is not which is doing the reverse thing of Babel. You can see from the layout. So the idea of this library is because right now when you're downloading a npm package, usually it is in ES5, which is for reasons that the older browsers can run that JavaScript. But actually with the new browsers, it's not mandatory to ship ES5. You can ship newer JavaScript, which is lesser code, lesser bundles, and you like the time to ship your code, which is pretty important. And yeah, keep in mind it's not only to lazy load stuff, but to lazy load the right stuff at the right time. So yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to share with you. Iliya, what do you think about?
Usually lazy loading is something that it's not necessary for small applications. I think it's very important if you have like a large application and you're lazy loading like big components, because I don't see why you should be able to be creating extra calls for just small components, just because the call itself it's going to be I don't know, just not necessary. I mean, you have to like, I mean, if you're familiar how TCP works and everything, I mean, it's going to cost more just to download a small piece of code than just bundling to the whole application. So just don't lazy load everything, just lazy load if it's necessary to. That's what I have to say. But yeah, these are some pretty interesting tools. I'm actually surprised that you didn't mention this to the Webpack bundle analyzer.
Just I forgot it.
this is the thing that we use mostly, or at least I don't know, Harry.
Yeah, I've used it a lot in the Angular projects, but
exactly,
it's like daily tool, so
yeah. So the Webpack bundle analyzer is really cool because it provides you with this image, and you can actually see your whole application with all individual modules. And whenever you're actually having a problem just because for example, or someone just added the whole library instead of just using a single piece of it, you can actually see it here very visually, and you can actually just go and see and fix the problem. So yeah, the Webpack bundle analyzer, I think, is one of the best things. Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned about the size of the application. Is there reasonable to use like code splitting and stuff? Do you know about the code splitting paradox? At some point, your application is so small that it doesn't make sense to lazy load stuff because it's so small. And at another point, your application is so big that either way you are shipping a lot of code. And the tricky moment is when and what should be lazy loaded. So in this line of thoughts, another interesting thing is you said about the TCP, but let's say you have the HTTP tool, you push everything to the user and stuff, and you are facing yet another problem. Let's say someone is browsing your application on their mobile or slower machine, and at some point they just receive a huge chunk of JavaScript really fast, but the next moment they need to parse it and just to compile this JavaScript so that the browser can run it, and you have this like waggy moments where the UI stops because this JavaScript needs to be parsed. So that's another thing that you must think about when you are shipping code and prefetching stuff.
Yeah, not only. I mean, it can be a large piece of JavaScript, but you should not be having like a lot of synchronous code. That's all. I mean, you should be able to like break certain parts into asynchronous operations, so you're actually able to like give some like space to the browser so you can render things and just do other stuff. Actually, this is something that is very interesting, and this is something that I actually want to be able to like integrate into our project. I mean, our project is very small currently because we don't have anything, but probably it will be a good idea to just increment, for example, our work loop, something that, for example, React is currently working on to integrate into their project. So just do things like whenever like the browser has time to just, for example, re-render something. And this means that whenever the user is, for example, typing inside an input or something, like doing something that is very I don't know, something that is very important, because we don't want to be like blocking whenever the user is typing to just quickly do something else and just block the input. So because our application will start feeling bad or broken. We want to just say, okay, whenever you have time, if the user is like doing something meanwhile, just wait until it finishes, and then, for example, render my component, or just do like the fetching from the server or something like this. And this is going to be a pretty interesting thing, I think, to implement. And this is actually a new browser API. There is like a new browser API called request idle callback. And pretty much the request idle callback, what it does is that it waits whenever the browser is idle, and it gives you like some time to just do not so important operations. And this is something that actually the React the React people were using to create. Just because with React you need to, like, you have a really large tree with all the fibers, and you have to calculate them. Of course, currently we're not doing anything like React are doing, just because we're using lit-HTML, and lit-HTML, I think it's more efficient, just because instead of like creating a fiber for each individual element, we just know all the static parts and we know all the dynamic parts, so it's much faster than just creating and checking every single fiber. But yeah, they actually were using this so they can like split their reconciliation algorithm into smaller parts, so they don't block the user when they are like doing some operations. I mean, this is something that React Fiber actually is. I mean, I think that it's not actually still doing it, because they're working on creating their custom scheduler. This is something that we can, I don't know, talk about some like in some future episodes, and we can actually like play around with it. But yeah, I think that this is going to be a pretty interesting episode if you guys, what guys? I mean, if you
I want to see what about the scheduling, because it's very tricky to be used. I mean, like, if you don't know what you're doing, it's just magic, and I think it will be good, even for our viewers and for myself, to like get better with it. And yeah,
sure. Let's do it. I mean, why not? I think that it's going to be pretty interesting. Maybe in the next episode we can create a custom work loop or something that will actually.
That would be very interesting.
The only thing is that our strategy for currently our strategy for changing stuff, it's not very, how should I say it, like convenient, because what we currently are doing is we're just re-rendering our. I mean, it's pretty okay actually. I mean, maybe at a certain point we would like to have like a proper, how should I say, like reconciliation or change detection algorithm that it goes through all the components and pretty much re-renders the component that actually has changes and stuff like that. Because as you see currently, what we are doing is we're using the detect changes, and whenever like a property on this individual instance changes, we just re-render this component, but we don't actually affect the other ones that are on top. So we don't have like a single, for example, loop that goes from the top to the bottom. We're just updating the individual components, and I'm not sure if this is like something that it's very nice, just because probably if a component from the top is, I don't know, is expecting, it's like using something from a component that it's like a child, it won't actually get re-rendered just because it doesn't know that the component in the bottom re-rendered, right? So probably a better idea is to do something like what React and Angular probably and Vue are doing. Whenever we have a change, we start from the top and we pretty much re-render what is necessary to get re-rendered. So yeah, this is something that I had in mind for future episodes as well. To, for example, integrate Zone.js with our project, and for example, implement our custom change detection algorithm for our like small library that we have, something like what Angular is doing.
That will be very interesting.
Yeah, this is very interesting because
and kind of challenging.
no, it's not. It's not very challenging. I've implemented it once for one demo, so I think that it's going to be interesting. The other way around is, for example, to do something like React, what React is doing, but they're really dependent on the set state function, because if you don't call the set state function and if you don't provide a change to the state, you actually won't get a re-render like triggered, right? So for me, like what currently Angular is doing with the Zone.js, it's I don't know. I think that it's really cool. But I mean, there are probably some drawbacks because we're monkey patching the environment. But I think that it's really cool without calling something like set state or anything. We just know to just trigger a change detection, and yeah, everything works automatically. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
I'm also an Angular fan, so totally agree with you on that. I mean, you just do stuff and they work. I mean, for a beginner, it's kind of hard to start with Angular, but let's say if you have like 6 months of experience, everything is like coming to you just by itself. I mean, it's not like you have to rediscover the hot water with some other libraries which depend on router libraries or stuff, or yeah. I'm not saying names, but you know.
So as you know, I'm Angular fan as well. After all, I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies. I do prefer Angular. I like React as well. I mean, I don't want to like say something so our React.
Who said anything about React? I mean, like I just said Angular, no names. No, yeah.
But I really do like all the libraries. They try to fix the same problem in different ways. And I think that it's very necessary to have all the libraries because each library is working in a different direction. And at certain points, a lot of new things get discovered. For example, the scheduler that I'm talking about, currently there is like a proposal for this scheduler to be integrated to all of the browsers. This means that at a certain point we might have like scheduler that we can say, okay, this task is more important than the other one, so you should just execute it as soon as possible. And this task is like not very important, so you should just wait, for example, for an idle callback. So whenever something else is going on, you should just, for example, do this. This is very useful if you have, for example, some analytics for your page, because the analytics are not so important. I mean, the most important thing is for your application to be very smooth and just the users to be enjoy it, right? So analytics is not something very important, and this is something where you can actually use the request idle callback API to do it. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. So all of the libraries, I like them all. I cannot say that I hate the library. So yeah, very nice. Okay, I guess we have what, like 20 more minutes. We can either just close the episode earlier, or just implement something else, or just talk about something else. I don't know, Harry. What do you suggest?
I'm looking right now for one library which I want to use as a pick for the end. So probably we can like, I don't know, you can say your picks, or I don't know.
I'm just going to wait a little bit for my picks, because after you show the library that you want to show, I'll present the draft for the scheduler API that I was talking about, and then we can.
That's a great idea.
I just need to find it first. Let me just see where it is. Okay.
All right.
Tell me whenever you share your screen so I can put it on.
All right. It was something like list or something. Yeah, I found it. The library is actually called lists. It's about immutable data structures, which is something that from time to time is on my focus, and I'm excited about the whole concept and stuff, JavaScript, immutability, functional stuff. That's the hype right now. And I want just to open the link with the benchmarks, and I also share my screen.
I also found the things that I want to share, so we're on time.
You can start first, and I'll.
Okay, since we are already on the topic, I'm just quickly going to start first. Okay, so the first thing is this cooperative scheduling of background tasks. This is a draft, as you see, 30 December 2019. It's brand new, and it's pretty much it shows like the request idle callback methods, and pretty much this is like the documentation. You can read it, you can see how it works. Pretty much the idea is whenever like there is an idle period inside the browser to be able to be executing certain tasks. And yeah, they're, as you see, they're very detailed, explained here. And this is something that we actually be doing next time. And the other things that I'm actually going to put these links inside the video description. So if someone's interested in them, or maybe, I mean, it's not going to be relevant to put them in this video, maybe in the other, in like next time.
Yeah. I also think that.
Today we're talking about code splitting. So this is the one document. There is another one called the main thread scheduling API. This is a proposal. Actually, you can like read stuff here about the scheduling problem. There is also like a presentation, really cool presentation here from the Web Performance Working Group from June 2019. So it's pretty new. They also have a video about them talking about this thing. And there is also this part, which is called is input pending. This is another proposal that allows you to see if something is like pending whenever like you have a click or key down or whatever. It's pretty cool, this one as well. And yeah, I think these are my picks for this episode. Of course, probably they're going to be the same ones for the next episodes. This, but yeah, probably it's going to be a good idea for our audience to maybe review them, and whenever we start doing something, to have comments and stuff, so it's more interesting, I guess. We'll see.
All right, so my turn. And I should be sharing my screen. So the library that I mentioned is List. Like 2 years ago, when you search anywhere on the internet for immutable libraries to persist data, let's say, for example, your store or whatever you want to persist in the browser and to be immutable, you'll find immutable.js, which is a Facebookish kind of thing, and the other one is Mori.js, which is kind of older and with less support. But some guys are saying that if there are no issues and there are no features, it means that it's just enough. And the library that I want to talk about right now is this library called List. The most impressive thing about this library is if you open the benchmark page, it's kind of faster in some ways even than the native arrays, than wall dash and cut methods. And I mean, like, here is the map. It wins to iterate over stuff twice. It's kind of the fastest out there. So if you're doing stuff with immutable libraries, maybe you can, and you need performance, maybe you can check it out. So yeah, it's a pretty cool library.
Actually, this is pretty interesting. I haven't heard of this library, but that's very interesting. If you want, you can actually, is it very different than immutable.js, like the API?
I haven't played that much with it yet, but I mean, it gives you the basic functionality that you need over List. So even if it's a little bit different, it's still the same.
No, I'm just wondering, because if it's like kind of different, you can maybe do an episode about it.
I think it's, yeah.
Yes, sure.
When I give it deeper depth, maybe I can do something about this library and some others. But I think it's focused mainly on lists. I mean, like no other structures and stuff. But yeah.
Okay, that's
and also watch The Witcher. You know, the Netflix movie The Witcher. This is my other pick, and that's for me great series. Great series.
Oh yeah, I have one other pick actually. I just remembered. So if you go to YouTube, come on, YouTube Angular Air. You're actually going to, I'm not sure if you guys watch this show. I've been watching it for a while now, and yeah, that's me here. So next week, I'll be talking about this library that I renamed yesterday. It's because actually I called it async render, and we actually were not doing something like it is when it really depends. Like whenever we're talking about our languages, for example, the English or Bulgarian, it's like it really depends on the context that you look the thing with, and it was actually kind of a async render, like async resolver thing. But since there is like this thing about asynchronous rendering that we were actually going to be talking about next in the next episode, I kind of renamed it. So it's called HG Resolvers. So it's inside my GitHub repo, HG Resolvers. And this is a library that allows you to easily create this resolvers that are like directives, and pretty much it allows you to easily connect them with certain parts of your application. And I'm not going to be really deep diving now. So if you're like writing Angular, probably it will be interesting for you to watch this episode. It's really interesting because it's this really interesting number. But yeah, I guess this is my pick for today. Okay, well, it was a pleasure, and we'll see each other next Saturday. Harry, are you going to
I'll be online.
Okay, perfect. I think that I'll be online as well. So probably it's going to be a good idea to create, I don't know, just create our episodes every Saturday, or at least try to do it if we have enough content, I guess.
Okay, so that was for me. See you guys. And
okay, bye-bye guys, and until next time.